if I step on court, there's no excuse. No matter if you're doing practice, you're doing a lesson, you're in a competition, whatever it is, you step on court, you chose to step on court. So own up to it, right?
Welcome to the Iron Mind podcast. What separates the elite from the merely good? Follow me as I explore the makeup of elite athletes. What helps them come through when the pressure is greatest and the stakes the highest? My name is Corey. In today's episode, I interview Aly Tolba, a PSA professional, former Trinity College player, and now director of junior squash at Bancroft Squash. As a junior, he was ranked as the number 1 BU15 in Egypt. He won the U.S. Junior Open in the BU15 division before moving to the U.S. to attend boarding school at Westminster. At Trinity, he played as the number 4 seed in his senior year. As a coach, Aly has helped develop top Egyptian and U.S. juniors, with many going on to represent their countries and play for Ivy League teams. Today, we talk about his journey from Egypt to the U.S., how he developed mental toughness from a young age, and what kind of mindset he hopes to teach his players. Enjoy. Hey Aly, it's great to connect with you outside the courts. For those who don't know, I train with Aly all the time, and he gives me lessons every week. Anyways, thank you for joining me today. We talk about the mental side of squash during our lessons all the time, but I'm super excited to discuss the topic in a little more detail today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Corey. It's good to see you out of court and out of school. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Perfect.
hmm
First, could you start by sharing a little bit about how you got into squash in Egypt? What led you to the US to play for Trinity? And now that you're playing on the tour, how did you kind of want to get into that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I started in Egypt. I'm from Alexandria, Egypt. I have an older brother who's like 5 years older than me. I was doing a bunch of sports, and one of them was squash. It was like squash, soccer, swimming, track and field. It was like a bunch of sports until I was like, let's say 7. I chose to just do squash and soccer, and I was pretty good at both. My mom then was like, "Well, you gotta focus on one or the other, just because of how time consuming it could be to do two sports, as serious as you can possibly do them." So I for some reason, my brother was decent at squash, and he was like 5 years older than me, so I used to always go to the courts and watch him play and watch him do lessons and suffer in fitness and stuff like that. And he was always around that community of squash players that I sort of felt comfortable with as well in our club, in Alexandria Sporting Club. So I was quick to choose squash, and I wasn't even like, I couldn't hit, 5 drives in a row yet. So I was struggling a bit, and I actually wanted to quit for a second, and I had an excuse of like telling my mom that, "Oh, I feel so warm on court, like there's no AC on court, so I don't want to play squash." I was just finding any excuse to not play squash because of, I found it a little bit of, you need to trust the process to actually feel the improvement. So it's not like I'm gonna come back in 2 or 3 days and see an immense improvement. So it taught me a lot at the beginning as well to just like be sort of satisfied with your little improvements as well, the baby steps sort of thing. So yeah, I got started from there, and then when I was like 9 years old, I would say I started with my coach, who is still coaching me till this day, Dr. Muhammad Arif, and he is the best coach ever, in my opinion. He got me as fit as possible for this sport that's, to me, is all about movement, and when we dig deeper about mental toughness, I think movement has a big part in it when you're actually on court. So yeah, I started at 9, and my coach was mainly a doctor of like biomechanics in a big college in Alexandria, who he hasn't competed in squash or anything like that really before. He was my fitness coach, and I used to do squash with a bunch of very good legendary squash coaches. But he was kind of my main coach, my main motivator, my main guy who coached me everywhere in tournaments and all that. So he knew how to press those buttons to get me mentally tougher and to get me prepared and just to keep me in the zone and to keep the goal that I have, for my squash career ultimately, and kind of for my life, clear every time I go to practice uh, or go to tournaments or anything. So yeah, I mean, I started taking it very seriously at like 9. I would say I got to number two in the nation at like 10 years old, and then it just kept going from there. My thing was really about fitness. I was very, very fit. So I really focused on that more than anything. So
Yeah.
that's how I got started with squash. And then coming to the US, it wasn't much longer after. It was like 4 years after. I was 14 years old when I came to the US first. Went to Westminster High School in Simsbury, Connecticut. And I started as a 10th grader. The main reason I was interested in going to school in the US and ultimately ended up going is because my older brother, who I mentioned earlier, went to Bates. He was at Bates College, so
Yeah.
he used to come play the US Junior Opens, and I used to join him. And I was much younger, so I wasn't really looking at colleges and stuff, but he was sort of talking to coaches and all that. So that sort of gave me the first introduction to academics in the U.S. and ultimately a life in the U.S. Came to Westminster as a 14-year-old 10th grader, graduated as a 17-year-old, so started at Trinity as a 17-year-old freshman, pretty young. And I
Yeah.
had I had teammates my freshman year who were 28 years old, so it was pretty big. They were like older than my older brother, so it was wild to me a bit. So yeah, it went from there, and then um, experiences and different experiences on and off court, shaped ultimately the reason why I went to Trinity, the reason why I ended up in Boston, and it's the reason why I'm in Bancroft right now and trying to, do my best on the PSA squash tour. And that's, my main thing. But yeah, that's how we're here now,
Thank you for that.
of course.
Well, competing at a high level in Egypt, then in college, and now you're competing professionally. How did the mental side come into play during those transitions? And did you notice certain moments where you had to adapt your mindset to handle different kinds of pressure?
Yeah, of course. I mean, when I was a junior in Egypt, I would say my lifestyle really included squash in everything I do since I was like 10 years old. And you could see the potential of, I'm number two in the country, and I haven't even been playing seriously for more than a year. So my coach and my mom were like, all right, so let's we're gonna give you all the resources we have to ultimately reach the goal that you want to get to. So early on at 10 years old, I was a very hard worker, and I really learned that from my coach. It wasn't like I was just born a hard worker. I at the beginning I did not like it. I didn't like spending so much time doing fitness, spending so much time stretching after every practice. It wasn't, the most fun. I was a kid. I had fun playing soccer for fun with my friends and going out and such stuff. So early on, from 10, my coach used to pick me up before school in some mornings at like 4 or 5 a.m. and we'd go run on the beach and go swimming after, and then he'd take me to school, and then I'd finish my school day, from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. or so. And then I'd go home, get a quick bite, do some homework, and then go to the club, spend my whole day there. And spending my whole day there, I'm doing a bunch. I'm talking to many different people, and that's really the main thing. I love listening to people, I love learning about stuff. I love the idea of I don't know everything, and you can always learn much more from listening to anyone, really.
For sure.
So I was surrounded, luckily, by my brother, who, was 5 years older than me, and he's been through that process that I'm going through. So he was helping me a bunch. And then, I was surrounded by a bunch of champions, in Alexandria. Yeah, of course, I don't need to mention names. They're all legends, right? So I was surrounded by them all the time. And they used to come up to me and give me words of motivation and give me ideas on what it takes to get to that level. And not just give me ideas. I used to come to the club every day and I see them over there putting in the work that, is not easy. And ultimately you get to that position that's not easy for anyone to get to, So that part was honestly the mental toughness and the mental focusedness and the mental preparation in your everyday life and practice reflects so positively when you go to competition, when you go to tournaments. So it's such a terrible idea that players do not worry about their mentality in practice and in lessons and in clinics, and even when they're just messing around with friends on court. hitting tin after tin after tin, I'm gonna get used to tins, right?
Yeah.
I'm just messing around. Well, yeah, but you're also getting used to something, even though you're messing around. So I'm not saying you shouldn't mess around sometimes. You should have fun with that sport that you chose. But at the same time, you need to understand how much of a difficult sport it is, how much the competition is getting higher and higher, and how, in some instances, you need to be like a robot. You need to just think the same throughout, many phases of the game, many phases of the match, many phases of the point just in the rally. So I got used to that mental toughness big time when I was practicing, when I wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. and I have to work out, and then I go to school with my friends, and I'm like 10, 11 years old, and they're like, were you seriously like out there doing fitness at 4 or 5 a.m.? Like we barely made it to class, right? So that idea, honestly, that getting used to it, practicing the mental toughness, practicing the idea of, if I step on court, there's no excuse. No matter if you're doing practice, you're doing a lesson, you're in a competition, whatever it is, you step on court, you chose to step on court. So own up to it, right? So if I'm not ready to if I'm gonna have excuses, I would rather not step on court, right? I learned that from a very early age. I learned from an early age as well that, and that's from practice and lessons, and it's not, in my opinion, when mentors and coaches are just like, hey man, it's okay, it's just a bad day, right? They make you get used to, it's okay, it's just a bad day. So what if I can do something about that bad day, right? And make it not a terrible day, maybe make it a decent day. It doesn't have to be a great day of squash. I'm having a bad day. Let's try to make it a decent day. It doesn't have to be a great day, right? In all sports, you're gonna go through that. So I learned from an early age that the attention to details, right? And it puts your mentality in just a place of sort of rhythm with the mental toughness, right? I'm focused on my details. I'm not focused on the score. I don't care if I'm 10 love up or 10 love down, right? I ask for the stroke. I want the stroke. I'm 10 love up. I want it, right? So I don't know what the score is. That's the idea. I want to just focus on the details, and I want to go with the present, right? And ultimately, I figured out by myself, and I did speak to my coaches over that, like I could make a very silly mistake and it won't take less than a second, right?
Yeah.
But the time I'm gonna regret it for is much longer than a second, right? I'm gonna regret it for days, I'm gonna hours, whatever it is. So I learned early on the importance of attention to details, the importance of, oh, like, you're responsible. You're on court. Yeah, I'm 10, 11 years old. If I make a silly mistake, I'm the one who made it. It's not like I get punished from doing it. I don't want to do that silly mistake because there's no need for it. It's that type of idea. And I think different people think in that way differently, right? Like some juniors are going to be like, well, I think I did my best, right? And it still went in and that's absolutely fine. And others are going to be like, well, no, I want to never make that mistake again. And different perspectives, right? Different mentalities in different people ultimately, choose different paths. They take different paths, and both players could be champions, right? But when they get to play each other, right? And there's that mental toughness factor when it's 2-all games, because they're both very talented, very fit, very good squash players. But then there's that mental toughness part where I pay attention to details. I know that a silly mistake is gonna take such a short time. I'm gonna do it very quick, but I'm gonna regret it for so long. So I'm not putting pressure on myself. I'm just putting that responsibility on myself. I learned from an early age, and it could be because of how intense and competitive the competition in Egypt is, that embrace the pressure. There's not one time that you're gonna step on court and you're not feeling nerves, even if you're not playing against a very good player that you think you can beat easy and all that. There's people watching you. You don't want to make yourself look bad on court. What if that other player is there today, playing well? They're gonna put you under some pressure. You're not ready for it. So it's the idea of, I'm going in to play the finals. It's the same way I'm playing the round of 128, right? And if I can win 11-0 every single game, I'm gonna win 11-0 every single game. So I got to that mentality from a very early age, thanks to my coach, my mentor, right? So I think that mental part for me, I practiced it so much that it just became engraved. It became automatic. Like I don't know any other way. Did I make mistakes with my mental toughness and my mental health? Of course, so many times, right? And even in an older age, even when I was in college and when I was playing US Opens at 17, 18, when I was playing nationals in Egypt and stuff like that, I make mistakes mentally, right? And to me, I'm just like it's really a lack of practice. I just need to practice it more and more, get better at it. That's it. It's as simple as that, right? So it's not like I'm perfect in it because I've been practicing it since I was 10. It's such a hard thing to perfect. Like anything else, it's hard to perfect it. I would like to perfect it though. You know what I mean? That's it.
Yeah. Speaking of developing mental toughness at a young age, I saw that you won the US Junior Open back when you were in the U15s.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear more about that whole experience and if you remember what was going through your mind, both leading up to that final match, but also whenever it got tight. Like if there was a close call, referee calls, what was
Yeah.
kind of going through your mind?
Yeah, I mean, to go through that experience, I have to tell you about the previous U.S. Open, the one that I did not win, that I played under 15. So I was on my down year, but I was going in to win it. There were some Egyptians in the draw that, I'm beating back home and stuff, but they're very good players. We're all top five in the country and we're going to play the US Open. So I got to the semis in my down year and I was up 2-love 10-7. Then the other player came back 2-all games and then I was up again 10-8.
Oh, it's
So it was
brutal.
2-all 10-8 match ball in the semis and I lost. And I ended up getting third, I believe, in that tournament. Then I, I needed to feel like that's not normal. That's not normal to be up 2-love 10-7. And I'm training for it. There's no reason. In my opinion, I'm up 2-love 10-7, 2-all 10-8, and I lose. It's a mental, sort of. I think I got it done. I'm thinking I got it done before it's actually done, right? So I'm thinking I cannot just let it go. I cannot. I need to do something about it, right? I feel so terrible that, I was still in Egypt. My coach came with me, my mom came with me. We spent so much to go to the U.S. and so much time, so much money, so much effort. They have work back home. They left their work to just be with me. That whole idea since I was under 15, it just like very partially goes through my mind. It's not like a big deal, but I still want to be responsible. I still want to be a thoughtful person that like, well, yeah, you did all that, you sacrificed all that. I'm gonna do my
A lot of
best.
resources, for sure.
That's it. So I felt very bad after that, and after that loss, went back home. The amount of training, fitness, physical stuff that I did was crazy. I remember I did not do any squash for like 2 months or like a month and a half or something. I was literally doing gym and running, gym and running, gym and running, some ghosting, stuff like that. I just wanted a huge change in the way that I approach the game, right? Instead of just going from a way of I'm playing well, playing well, playing well, and then all of a sudden, because of the score or because of the circumstance, because of the environment I'm in right now, I changed the way I'm playing. I wanted to stop that part. I wanted to be consistent, as consistent as possible. And I thought, speaking to my coach as well, I'm under 15, so I'm not coming up with those decisions myself. I'm speaking to my coach, and he was like, "Well, let's try this, right?" So I come back, and I'm playing squash, and it's I think it's my best season in Egypt. That under 15 season before I won the US Open, I won a bunch of number ones. Go up a couple of tournaments, and ended up going to the US Open, and I was number one seed that year that I won it. And I played, the matches before. I don't think they were very tough. Before the semis, and then I got to the semis, and I remember I was playing this Pakistani guy, and he was much bigger than me. He was like two times my size, height, width, everything. And he was a scary guy. He was a very good player, and I'm not hitting the ball as hard as him at all, not even nearly. But I'm a smarter squash player, let's say, right? So I tried to outsmart him, and it was one of the longest matches at that time in my career that I've ever played. I remember I beat him in five, like 16-14 in the fifth. Right? It was a very, very tight match. And honestly, that was the match of the tournament. I don't think I dropped a game other than that match. I won the finals against a very good friend of mine from Egypt, who was also a top five player, but we played all the time. So I had a pretty direct plan.
Yeah.
While I won the final in three. And that was, to be honest, the main challenge wasn't even during the tournament. It was my time training before the tournament. It was my first year in the US. I was a freshman. I was a 10th grader. I was 14 years old at a school that is Division three at squash. I didn't choose the school because of the squash. I chose it, yeah, mainly because of academics and because of the community that it's in. I could have went to a different high school that has better squash. I was not really looking too much at the other competition that I could train with, other people that I can train with, other coaches that are in the area that I could. I just chose it because of the community, the social community, and I was ready to be dependent on myself to get better at squash, to train, to practice. I thought that I could do it even with not the highest level of players around me all the time, right? I still wanted to get the high level of playing, so I went to many tournaments. I reached out to many people and pros and stuff to come play with me, or I go to them, in that Connecticut area. But it was very, very challenging because I was in boarding school. I was 14. I don't have a car. I can't go out too much. I have to, get permission. People can't just come to school at any time to play with me, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I used to, I'm ready to do fitness, right? Again,
Just fitness.
I woke up at 6:30 a.m. as much as I could. I wouldn't say every day at all. As much as I could to finish my fitness. I felt good finishing my workout and then going to school. And then after that, I had to play. I did varsity soccer for a season. For my 3 years, I did soccer. And in the spring, I got like an exemption one time, and 2 other years I did a sport. So I was also doing different sports. I was doing soccer, preparing for the U.S. Open by myself. I don't have a coach. I don't have players to play with. So the amount of solo that I put in, the different, exercises and drills and patterns and solo that I could come up with to serve what I feel like I wanted to get better. The amount of time I was watching squash videos and learning from those very, very good squash players and seeing what they're doing and just watching, I would remember I'm watching a full hour match and I didn't even look at the ball. I'm watching their feet, because I just want to learn something today from the feet, so that I can go do ghosting the next day and try to emulate it, try to do the same thing. So that challenge was very hard for me to be on my own and practice on my own and then just go to the US Open and meet my coach there, see my coach, my Egyptian coach, just see him
Yeah.
there. And then he's like a day or two before the tournament, he's like, all right, like, let's get on court. So he's coaching me. And I remember I was playing with this racket that I just got sponsored by. I don't need to say the brand name, but my coach wasn't aware that I'm sponsored by this new racket. So I started playing with it. And he's like, you're not playing with that racket in this tournament. And I'm like, well, what? What do you mean? And he's like, your shot's not going anywhere. Like there's no heaviness on my shot, right? So he wanted to change it. So before the tour, one day before that tournament, I had to
Or
change from a round different brand racket to my Technofiber racket, right? So it was an experience, but to me the racket doesn't matter at all. But it was like a wake up kind of call, right? I'm like, okay, I've been playing with iRacket. I'm practicing in a different mentality, different intense. Then my coach from Egypt, first thing he tells me is like, you're changing that racket. Like, well, what are you doing? So I'm like, this is like a surprise. So I'm my mentality is just changing a bit now. It's coming back to the way that I used to interact with my coach and honestly, all praise goes to him. Whenever I channel my mentality with the closest circle of mine, which is really my coach, my brother, and my mom. Whenever I channel that mentality, whenever if I can remember, whenever they're there watching my match and they're with me, preparing me for my match, I think I did my best in those matches by far. I had my best results, even if they're not a win result. I still did my best, So to me, channeling something like that um, gives me a big push. Till this day, I'm playing PSA. I actually have a tournament in 2 days, and I'm talking to my coach. I'm talking to him about how do I channel the times. Even when I was young, my mentality was a bit you know more consistent when I was at a younger age. Maybe now because there's just too many responsibilities and all that type of stuff.
yeah.
So I'm trying to get it better again. We all, like many people, could know the right stuff and what to do. It's hard to put it to action, but all you can do is just keep going at it, keep going consistent at it, and I'm sure that one day, one time, it's gonna click.
Yeah. I know you were saying that your coach was obviously a big mentor for you.
Hmm.
He coached you on and off the squash court,
Hmm.
and then you also did a lot of fitness. But did you do anything, well, either growing up or even right now, did you do anything specific to train your mindset? Something like journaling, visualization, or routines
So
before your matches?
I did visualization so many times. It's the visualizing was a thing that my coach taught me. That coach that I'm talking to you about, he taught me since I was 10 years old to visualize. So I used to either visualize the night before when I'm like in bed, sleeping, about to wake up for the match the next day. I either visualize there, and we talk deeply about visualizing. We talk about how it needs to be very specific. I'm playing against not a very competitive match, right? I'm not playing against a very good player. Then I'm going to win 11-1, 11-2, 11-2. I'm going to keep it sort of realistic. I'm playing against, a good level player. Let's say I'm number two, he's number one. I win, but, 11-9, 11-8, 11-7. That's when I'm visualizing this. So I play my match out point by point with the serve, with the return, with the going to the tee, with volleying, with the rallies. I play them out point by point. So it takes me like a good 30 minutes or so to visualize, right? So I like to do it the night before my match. At sometimes that I've tried to do it the day of my match. Like sometimes I have two matches in one day, right, in juniors. So I did the visualizing the night before, and then I have the next match. So I sit with my coach and my mom and stuff, and literally in the club, and we're just sitting there on the table. I'm just closing my eyes and I'm playing my match. I'm playing the match that I am playing soon with my opponent, and I'm playing it up point by point, and I'm winning. So it does make it much easier when you get to a match. It's sort of, you played most scenarios out. You know how you want to look on court. It's the sort of thing where it also helps execute the plan better. When I'm visualizing, we already talked about the plan, so I'm visualizing myself playing with the plan, right? So visualizing is a huge thing for me, huge thing. And then visualizing for squash matches and such, made me believe in visualizing for non-squash stuff, right?
Yeah,
And meditation, so visualizing is a big meditation part. And you pay attention to your breathing, you close your eyes, you sit somewhere calm, and you just play out the match, literally watching it, but closing your eyes. It's all in your mind, right? So it's a big part. Visualizing is honestly a huge thing that, if a player feels very nervous about a match, if they feel so much pressure, or it's a very important match to them, I would really advise them to sit down and visualize their match and take their time visualizing the match.
sure.
I guarantee it helps big time. So visualizing was a big thing. What else? I did a bunch of little details that, I used to talk to myself a lot. I used to talk to myself a lot during warm-ups. I used to talk to myself a lot
Still
before my
toxic.
match. You know, the talk is like, I'm literally talking to myself, like I'm motivating myself, and I'm saying, like, you're very good. You've trained for this. You're very good. You're ready. You're ready. You're ready. You're ready. And the more you repeat it, the more it sticks. And so I used to do that when I'm very nervous as well. When even when I'm not, it just gives me that, confidence, and I'm ready to play a match that I know it's not the end of the world, whatever the result is gonna be. When I get to that zone, that mentality of, it's not the end of the world no matter what happens, I'm playing my best squash, right?
Yeah, because there's
So
just no more pressure.
exactly. So it's how there's gonna always be pressure. How can you embrace it? How can you react to that pressure, right? So talking to yourself is a big thing, even during the match. Before you serve, talk to yourself. After the point, talk to yourself. Even if you're gonna be a little bit harsh on yourself, try to be more analytic, and then positive, right? Analyzing them positive. I try to do that a lot till this day.
Yeah. Well, just to transition a little bit, as a coach, you've obviously worked with juniors who've gone to play at top universities and also represent their countries. What mental challenges do you see most often in junior squash players? And was there a particular player or story that taught you something as a coach?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the biggest recurring theme I see in very good junior players and players who have good potential, but they just don't believe in themselves that much, right? So there's two things that I see. First thing, there's too much emphasis on college and recruiting, right? So
Yeah.
I played the sport because I love it and because it's a sport that's gonna keep me healthy, right? Most players in the US who just really, really want to play it to get recruited to a good school put so much pressure on themselves. They could be a motivation thing for them. It could be, I'm gonna practice every day so that I can get better at squash so I can get recruited to a good school. Maybe it is like that, but then you get to a competition and there's some college coaches watching and they're like feeling so much pressure and they don't play as well. So it is normal. You're a human, so it is normal to feel that way and feel the pressure of college and what am I gonna do, especially with the competition going on. But I think I believe, of course, that all of you guys are good enough kids and smart kids and good enough at squash. And even if you didn't have squash, you're gonna end up fine. You're gonna go to school. It doesn't matter what school as much, but that's a big deal for you guys. But if you do your best and have that positive, clean mindset of, I'm thankful. I'm thankful for the resources that my parents gave me to play the sport. I'm thankful for having the ability to wake up every day and be healthy and sweat and, do it again and again in one day, you know, I'm thankful for that. So I don't see too much of that thankfulness. I see too much, a bit more of, no, I need to get much better to get recruited. I'm like, well, it's not going to work that way, right? Nothing's going to work that way. If you really want to get better, then analyze yourself. Think about what you need to get better. Stop putting yourself under so much pressure. I always think I'm playing against an opponent. Why should I be also my opponent? Why would I be too harsh on myself when there's someone else also against me? How many people can be against? It's not nice. It's not. I want to be cheating for myself. I want to be believing myself. Happy with what I'm doing, right? So I think that's honestly a huge theme, right? Of okay, like we're under 15 now. It's time to either be very good at squash and get recruited to an Ivy League, or quit squash because I'm not gonna get recruited to an Ivy League school. That's not how it works. That's not how it
Yeah.
works. It clicks sometimes at under 19, right? College coaches don't worry too much about under 15s, under 13s, and low. So uh, play the sport because you like it and because it's healthy. If you're gonna play to get recruited, it's not gonna be that very fun process. Maybe it will work out. In my opinion, there's so much, pressure that at least some of the kids that I coach on, the recruitment process. And there's parents that do a great job with easing out that idea of no, no, don't worry about, the recruitment. Just enjoy and feel good on court and be happy, be smiling while doing sports. There's no reason to, be too hard on yourself and be very frustrated all the time, be very angry all the time. It's a sport to let the steam out a bit more, right? It's a lifestyle. And even when I'm not in competition, you already got recruited, whatever it is. I guarantee that those kids who have felt, so much need to get recruited and put so much, they go play squash after the recruitment and they're enjoying it. They're just letting steam out. So
Exactly.
just play it for the enjoyment part, right? Just do it for the health. Do it for the reason that you started playing that sport, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big theme. The next big theme, I think, is uh, rating and believing that I can beat, I don't know, six whatever rating when I'm a five whatever rating. It's crazy to me. Like, what do you think? You think you think you're gonna get to the top without beating the top? Go in and play your best. Believe in yourself. I You play matches better, at least in my junior career in Egypt and stuff. You play better when you're the underdog, right?
Yeah.
I don't see that much here. Here I'm not seeing the giving it your all because you're an underdog wanting to be the best, right? It's more of, and some players could be like that. It cannot be all the players are with the mentality of I cannot beat the better player, right? It cannot be.
Yeah.
But a lot of the players that I see, They play against, let's say they're in the top 30 rankings and they're playing against top 10. They're going into the match with the mentality of, I cannot do it. I can never be done. So why are you stepping on court then? Let's go back home and train then, and then come back. Why are you even stepping on court? Why did you come to the tournament? You know? So if you don't believe you can get it done, you do not need to get it done every single time, but believe in yourself, believe that you can get it done. It reflects well off court as well in your personality, right? So you have to look at squash from a way of it sort of also forms your personality off court as well. It helped me form my personality in many, many different ways. So I think those are the two big things, the putting too much pressure on yourself because of recruiting, and the idea of I do not believe that I can beat, that better player. Before you get on court, you're thinking that way. So those are two honestly, they are mental toughness issues.
It is.
I believe that if you have the mental toughness to trick your mind, and sometimes, because I used to go through those feelings as well, of the feeling pressure to get recruited, playing against a much better player and thinking, it's going to be very hard to get it done. I don't know if I can get it done. I try to trick my mind, and I got help from mentors and coaches. It's not like I just figured that out myself, but they tell me, who is the most player that you feel comfortable playing with? And I'm like, my brother. I love playing with my brother, and I loved hitting with him and practicing with him, and it was very competitive and all that. So, but it was a very healthy competition sort of thing. The difference in age and all that type of stuff, and we both want to see each other succeed as much as possible. So I used to put that player that I feel very nervous playing against or something in a body bag, pretend he's my brother. I trick my mind. You're gonna be like, wow, how do you do that for 45 minutes thinking you're playing against someone else when you're playing? I trick my mind. I trick my mind. I put him in a body bag. I just don't think about that name that I'm playing against. I'm just playing, So the idea of going into a match, thinking about the result, winning or losing, there's no good that comes out of it, right?
Too much
It's
pressure.
too much pressure about I need to win or I cannot lose. No, you need to do your best. If you do your best and you lose, that's awesome. If you do not do your best and you win, well, that's not good, right? So
Yeah.
it's not about the result as much. It's about the person you are. It's about the consistency that you can put on court. I'm not saying that you're going to be 100% every day. You cannot get on court and feel as fit, as quick, as efficient every single day on court. You have the 100% today, give the 100 of the 100. You have the 20% today, give 100 of the 20, right? So getting to that mentality as early as possible and understanding how you need that sense of responsibility when you're on court. You cannot just be waiting for someone outside to sub in for you or to help you or to tell you, oh, it's all good, don't worry. That
Yeah.
sense of responsibility on court from a young age, I think, makes champions. You know, that's it.
Yeah. For sure. I even for myself, I definitely see that whenever I'm able to change my mindset to believing, you know, I just want to go out there, have fun. And because I've built this into my muscle memory, I've played the same shot so many times myself. There's no need to really put that pressure and be like, oh, if I lose, then I'm going to have to play, this guy two more matches after that, and it's going to be a long tournament or anything.
Yeah,
Whereas when I'm just focusing on having fun or losing, having fun on court, I find myself even when I'm down or I'm losing, I'm still smiling, and it's like I'm having fun figuring it out.
I've seen that firsthand from you, right?
Yeah,
I've seen you put too much pressure on yourself, and it doesn't look like you're having fun on court. I'm not necessarily saying when you're putting too much pressure on yourself, you're not playing well. It doesn't look like you're having too much fun on court, right? When you're having fun on court, when you're just enjoying your squash on court, it looks like you're playing, well, doing your best and enjoying your time on. You just look calm, and you look like if you get in trouble, if you get stuck, you will find a way, right? You'll
yeah,
be able to think and find a way. But when you're putting too much pressure on yourself, and I can see that you're just rushing, not thinking, and you're not enjoying it, I know that if you get stuck a bit more than that, you're gonna be very stuck, right?
yeah,
So that is a very important point in squash. I mean, in my opinion, the mental part of squash, you get to a point where almost everyone is has the same fitness, same squash, right? It's everyone can hit the same shot from anywhere, right? So it is the mental consistency and toughness, right? So
Yeah.
those are the main factors that make those big differences between very consistent champions, not as consistent champions, and not the champions, the regular players, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, before we wrap up, I do have a tradition on this podcast
Hmm.
where the previous guest leaves a question for whoever comes on next.
Can I
You
ask
kind of
what
hit,
question I got asked?
yeah, yeah. So you kind of answered this a little bit before, but my previous guest asks, to what extent do you think mental toughness matters in squash, and how important is it to train it?
Well, I think we addressed it, right, a bit. Um, to what extent and how much of an influence it is on your training as well. Well, to what extent mentality is important in squash, I think is no more extent than mentality, right? And any good any squash player who just understands the game will be able to tell you that it's a mental game. It's a game of chess, right? You go in and you hit the ball super hard, and I'm just playing smart squash. I'm gonna make you suffer, right? So it is a game of mental toughness. As I said, I believe in the idea of at some moments you really, really need to feel like a robot. You need to feel as consistent as possible. It's tricky on court. Think you've been through every different situation, and then a different situation comes up when you're in competition, right? And you're like, okay, so you try to just like keep your head straight, think about the present, think about what you're used to doing good on court, because sometimes you get to a point where I'm on court, I'm playing in a match, it's 1-all games. For some reason, I do not even remember how to play squash. I'm playing such terrible squash. Then think about one thing that you do well and try to stick to it, right? Until you feel, right, like there's, a switch that's coming back on of, I know I'm feeling myself again. I'm feeling, the player that I feel in practice most of the time is coming back, right? When that player is not there, you're good at doing straight drives and crosses and moving your feet and volleying, stick to it for now, right? But when you're too stubborn, right, which all that is meant, right? Stubbornness and thinking about what to do when you're having that good squash, when you're having that bad squash,
Yeah.
all that is mental. If you're not able to think about it, you're not going to be able to do it. So you're not going to be able to stick to the basic and the movement, which is straight drive and cross, since you know how to do that and move on your off day, on your bad day. You're not going to be able to stick to that, plan B, if you're very stubborn and thinking, no, that drop needs to go and it needs to go that low. That nick needs to be played next time from his cross lob from the backhand to my forehand. If you're gonna stay that stubborn, nothing's gonna change. So it's the idea also of adapting and evolving as a squash player, and the amount of improvement you can get from the wins or losses if you're mature enough here throughout, the squash, and then even after when you're done, right? That the amount of improvement you can do because of the mental aspect of the sport is insane. It's immense, right? So, and it even gets better and easier and more advantageous when you have a good mentor, a good coach, a different perspective who's giving it to you, and it's a positive one, right? So the mental aspect of the sport is too immense. I cannot like there's nothing more than the mental aspect of the game that if you have a better mental, preview on the game, you're gonna improve your movement. If that's something that you need to improve, you need to improve your movement and speed. If you have that mental capacity to understand what it needs to take to improve your movement and to understand the efficiency on court, and this is all thinking. It's not just like I'm just gonna sprint on court and it's gonna work out like that. No, it won't. I need to be efficient. I need to save my energy for, all the games, right? So it's a lot about thinking and being smart and being as efficient as possible. And honestly, that's I love this sport because every single time I step on court, I feel like I can be more efficient in some way, right? And efficient is very important. There's so many aspects to efficiency, right? I can be more efficient in my movement, in my shots, and in my mentality, and a bunch of different things I can be more efficient in every time you step on court. So I think that squash needs a lot of efficiency. A better squash player is more efficient than the other player. And I think that the most help you'll get to reach that efficiency is by pushing yourself mentally every day to reach that efficiency on court that is not going to be always great, but it's going to be as consistent and balanced as possible.
Yeah, for sure. What's your question for the next guest relating to the mental side of squash or mental toughness in general?
Let's see. Well, I would want to ask the next guest, um, how important is it, like, in different stages of your career, from, under 15, under 15, under 15, under 17, under 19, is there a stage that mental toughness is more important than in a different stage? And what if my mental toughness at some stage wasn't good? As I got older, can I actually work on it and be very mentally tough? Or is that like something that I needed to get used to from a very young age, because this is a very specific, skill and talent leaned on sport, a bit, so I'm wondering if that mental toughness can be worked on later on, even so if I was a very, very mentally weak player, so I never really broke through the top 20, and now I'm under 17, so can I develop my mental toughness then? I believe that it is possible, but I wonder what the next guest would have to say about that. So yeah, the stages, and how does it relate to mental toughness? Those different stages in your career, different ages, different stages. How does mental toughness play out in those different stages? I'm
Yeah,
curious to know.
great question.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you.
thank you so much for coming on today's episode, Ali. It
Yes,
was a
sir.
pleasure talking to you, and thank you so much for your
You
time.
as well. Thanks so much for having me, Corey. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.